Hello and welcome to Kingston Now. I'm Jimmy Buff. This week we're going to introduce you to two groups doing important work in Kingston and the Hudson Valley. A little later on we'll meet the folks from Catskills Mountain Keeper. Right now it's Vanessa Shelmandine, Ted Hayes and Erica Gedney of the Hudson Valley LGBTQ Community Center here in Kingston. Hi Vanessa.
Good morning.
So tell me about those initials. What do they stand for?
LGBTQ stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and questioning.
Questioning. Now that's an interesting, I always thought it was queer, but it's questioning. Tell me about that.
It is both. For our community center, queer is the big umbrella term that some folks identify with as a strong, powerful word, a reclaimed word, something that used to be negative but now is very broad and brings a certain strength to members of the community.
And questioning?
Questioning is for those folks like me that it takes a little time to come out to yourself and to others. As we know, it can be challenging to come out to people because there is a potential for love, acceptance, and affirmation, and then sometimes there's a chance that it may lead to rejection or some ostracization.
Ted, you're one of the founders of the center. When did it open? When did it start?
We started at the end of Pride in 2005, and a founding committee worked for several months, and then we opened our center at the corner of Wall and John on the 2nd of February in 2007. So we've been in that location for 5 years.
What was the impetus for the opening? I mean, obviously centers like this community centers like this have been around for a number of years in other places. What took Kingston so long?
Well, it's not that many gay community centers in the country at that, but you need a leader in something like this, and we had one in Jenny Apuzzo, and she challenged us with at the end of Pride in getting that energy and excitement involved in something else, and asked us if we'd be interested in creating a community center for the LGBTQ and community. And like we've said many times, it was just like saying sick 'em to a dog, and we did.
Now Jenny has a really interesting background. She worked for Bill Clinton, right?
Yes, she did. She was the highest ranking employee in the White House administration under Bill Clinton, who was out and open as a lesbian identified woman.
That's a powerful force to have leading you as you're opening this center, right? Yeah. What happens at the center? What goes on there, Vanessa?
Many, many things go on at the center. We are a resource and an information hub, so people are calling and stopping by every day to get information to share with their family member or to get involved themselves in the work that goes on at the center. We have agencies calling us all the time saying that someone who is a recipient of their services really needs to become engaged with the LGBTQ community so that they're not feeling as isolated, as alone, or maybe they're having an issue in their life with discrimination somewhere in housing, employment, or at school, and they call us for those kind of resources also. We're out there in the world doing training all the time. In the 5 years that the center's been open, we've trained over 2,500 service providers, educators, physicians, health and human service providers of all kinds, and we do a lot of community awareness events.
You have some community awareness events coming up, like you've got the 20th anniversary Hudson Valley AIDS Walk happening, right, on May 12th, is that right?
May 5th.
May 5th, okay.
The Walkway Over the Hudson, ARCS, AIDS-related community services, hosts a walk called Hudson Valley AIDS Walk, and our community center has a team that'll be participating in the walk to raise awareness that infection rates, unfortunately, are not decreasing as dramatically as we'd hope, but there are plenty of really fine organizations that are doing prevention work, education awareness, and providing services to people who are living with HIV and AIDS, and it's really important in our community that we show up and give support to a cause like this.
Now, Ted and Erica, you are sort of the opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to age in the gay and lesbian community. Ted, we were talking before the cameras rolled about some of the challenges that your generation is facing as they get older, and Erica, you're in a different place where you came out in high school, and the acceptance seems to be a little more present than it was in Ted's time. Can you tell me what your experience was like in high school?
Definitely. Well, I came out when I was 14, and I was very out. I didn't mind it though. I noticed if you're just comfortable with yourself and brave, then the hostility that you face seems to vanish.
That couldn't have happened for you, Ted, when you were 14.
No.
Tell me about that experience.
when I was a young man, my partner and I were both from geographical areas that were far from here. I was in the Deep South, he was from the far West. In both of those places, in our youth, it would have been just about committing suicide if you came out. They'd beat you to death, if nothing else, and think they were doing Jesus a favor by doing that. And so I lived in fear, and I lived a lie for 47 years. I didn't come out until I was 47 years old. But I've never regretted that, and I finally have become the person that I'm supposed to be.
Great. I want to talk a little bit more about both of your experiences, but we're going to take a break, okay?
Okay.
You're watching Kingston Now. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back to Kingston Now. This week we're talking with Vanessa Shelmandine, Ted Hayes, and Erica Gedney of the Hudson Valley LGBTQ Community Center. And Ted, before the break we were talking about the generation that you came out, the generation that you sort of came to accept or put your gay lifestyle in the public eye, and now here we are all these years later, and your generation, which was really sort of a trailblazing generation in the early 70s, is now 70, 80, and there are some challenges with that. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. One of the challenges is that as we get older, there comes that possibility that we might have to depend on health care in a nursing home or assisted living, that kind of thing. And there are a lot of assisted living and home care agencies that are not aware of what it is to treat gay people. And also, the people that made my life miserable the first half of my life are going to be the people that I'm going to be going into a rest home with. And I would almost have to go back into the closet. And that's a scary kind of thing. I don't think I would ever go back in, but the people that are in charge of those assisted living places need to be trained so that they can deal with me and my kind.
Well, hopefully some of those people who have as they've aged, have hopefully evolved.
We can hope so.
We can hope. But what other, are there other challenges, like Vanessa, for the aging gay person, besides the fact that they may end up with the same people who they grew up with in a nursing home?
Yeah, for gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender folks, as they age, the resources that other people might rely on are not necessarily there. LGBT older adults are twice as likely to live alone, 3 times as likely not to have children that they could count on to be their family caregiver. So people in the community often want to turn to each other, and so some of our folks are really doing double jobs. They may still have a job that they're going to 9 to 5, but then in their life around their work, they're taking care of a friend in the LGBTQ community. And you know that caregiving can involve a lot of time and a lot of physical energy, as well as emotional reserves. So at the community center, we have a program for caregivers. It's open to everyone in the community. You can be LGBTQ identified or a straight ally that comes to the center, and can really talk with each other about what it means to give of oneself to care for another person when they're ill, when they're older and need someone to come in and do some of the household duties for them. And our group finds it really comforting. There are about 12 people who've been coming regularly, and the group is open for anyone to come in at any point and join in this support.
And back on the other side of the age spectrum is Erica. When you were coming out, were you able to access teen programs at the center?
Yes.
Tell me what they were like, what that was like.
Well, they have a youth program at the center called the Circles group, and it's a really comfortable group, and it's open for anyone to go to. I've attended a couple of those meetings. Just sit in a circle, converse about whatever stress you're dealing with, or just share about your life, and it was really comforting, and it helped me in my coming out process.
How important is that identification for you? How important was that identification to say, oh, there are other kids my age who are gay, and it's okay?
Well, it's nice to know that you're not alone. You know, I feel like in Ted's time, he probably felt alone in what he was going through. It was like a struggle, and you know, there were a lot of other people that identified as LGBTQ, and it's really nice to know that you're not alone.
And you also received a scholarship from the center as well?
Mm-hmm. That was last year. I graduated high school, and I received was one of the first recipients of the scholarship. So.
And now you're a freshman in college.
Mm-hmm.
That's very cool.
Yep.
What other teen programs do you have going on, Vanessa?
We have lots of partnerships with other organizations to help them bring inclusive programs, meaning programs that welcome and affirm and help support youth who identify as LGBTQ. We also host events at the center, so there are teen dances, there are discussion groups like Erica referenced, and we're doing a lot of work in the schools. We have a Safe Schools Roundtable where we meet with educators, administrators, parents, and students, and help schools to become safer and have resources on campus. It's really important that when students spend most of their time in school, school is a safe place for them.
Are you able to work with schools on some of that stuff?
Absolutely. Through our roundtable, we do lots of education projects like No Name Calling Week and the Day of Silence, and transgender awareness programs as well. We've gone to lots of faculty meetings and professional development for schools and helped educators really understand that they're the first line in changing the culture of the school and making it safer for students, so that they don't tolerate homophobic and racist remarks, and that they can put signs into their classrooms that they're affirming and they're an ally.
Well, you're doing terrific work at the center. It's great to see both Ted and Erica representing here today, and we appreciate you stopping by and talking about it.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for having us.
This is Kingston Now, and next up we're going to talk about protecting the Catskills with Mountain Keeper. You're watching Kingston Now. Catskill Mountain Keeper is a grassroots advocacy organization dedicated to protecting and preserving the unique and irreplaceable Catskill region of New York State. With us now is Program Director Wes Gillingham and High Peaks Regional Director Kathleen Nolan. Welcome, guys.
Great to have us here.
You know how I know that bit that I just said? I read it on your website.
Yeah.
Explain I mean, give a little body to that statement about protecting and preserving the irreplaceable Catskills.
Well, a few years ago, there were a lot of groups working in the Catskills, a combination of national groups and local groups. And there is this long history of issues coming up, whether it's casino development or just overdevelopment in general. But there wasn't, other than the Catskill Center, there wasn't really one organization that spoke as an advocate for the whole region. And so a bunch of folks got together and created that organization that was intrinsically connected to some of the other organizations that were working in the region from national and local groups. But to find an organization that could really be the strongest voice for the Catskills. And it is irreplaceable. The Catskills is one of the gems of the East, really. If you look at ecosystems, relatively intact ecosystems west of or east of the Mississippi, the Catskills really stands out as one of the jewels of the country.
No, I love the mountains here because I'm out in them, I'm on the trails, I run them, I hike them with friends, so I'm very much attached to the Catskills in that regard. But it's interesting to hear when you guys started that one of the biggest issues facing the Catskills probably was casinos coming in, and now it's sort of shifted to some of the more environmental stuff. Is that correct to say?
Yeah, and the obvious, and not the 500-pound gorilla, but the 6-ton gorilla in the room in this case is hydrofracking. And the issue of gas drilling that is teetering on the edge of approval by the governor at this point. Hydrofracking and the development that happens when they go after tight shales, it's an industrialization of the landscape. They come in and they want to do a grid work pattern across the whole landscape to get every little bit of gas they can out of that formation. And there's a whole series of technological issues, environmental issues, contamination issues, health impact issues that really speak to not allowing this to happen in a place like the Catskills or New York State, period.
The Catskills are a broad area, as you just illustrated, Wes. Kathleen, you're the regional director of what is being called the High Peaks region. What does that cover?
The high peaks are the peaks above 3,500 feet.
The 3,500 peaks, sure.
3,500 peaks, and they're mainly within the Catskill Park, few just outside the Catskill Park. So it's the area that is the Esopus Creek, goes eastward towards Woodstock area, and westward out beyond Livingston Manor and Fleischmann's, Margaretville, out to the Papacton Reservoir. Overlaps considerably with the 5 watersheds of New York City. So it's an area that was set aside just a little over 100 years ago for environmental purposes, and is today continuing to serve that purpose of creating an area for a watershed that provides unfiltered water to millions of people in New York City and the surrounding area.
The park itself, Catskill Park, was formed kind of because people were destroying the Catskills prior to that, right? Was it the tanning the bark industry that was just deforesting? Is that history correct?
Yes. The big initiative for creating the Catskill Park had to do with its conjunction with the Adirondack Park. There were some major fires that had happened from destructive logging practices in the Adirondacks, and there was a big push by people around the state at that point to protect the Adirondacks. And then there were some people in the Catskills that recognized, well, there's this place as well. We should protect the Catskills too. And that's what's made this so special, is that was 100 years ago. And we've had that protection.
And what's so interesting is that, so for 100 years we've been protecting it, but now there's a renewed effort to go back to a time when we can damage it. And we'll talk more about that in just a moment. This is Kingston Now, and we'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to Kingston Now. With us again is Program Director of Catskill Mountain Keeper West Gillingham and High Peaks Region Director Kathleen Nolan. So we mentioned fracking in the last segment, and it's the marquee item, environmental item in upstate New York, certainly in the past year or two. It's been around for a while though, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, 4 years ago, industry started coming into the Catskill region and the landmen were working through the area trying to get leases on land. That's when Catskill Mountain Keepers put up the red flag. What does this mean? And we held some public forums. We got people from out west who had been dealing with the hydrofracking issue out there. And actually, the first conversation I had with an activist from the Powder River Basin in Wyoming, I was telling, she didn't know anything about the Marcellus Shale, but I was telling her how big it was and what the development was looking like. And she goes, yes, finally there's gas drilling in the east. And what she was referring to is the fact that she'd been living with this and not being able to get better regulations, not being able to stop it. They were just running roughshod over communities, and the idea that it was going to come here where more people were paying attention, she was happy about that. She wasn't happy for the Catskills, but she was happy for
And where, frankly,
Wyoming.
a lot of the media is centered here in the east. And, you know, if you've got a writer for the New York Times who's got a second home in the Catskills and they're driving up and down the road and seeing no fracking signs and saying, gee, what's that about? You might get some attention.
Right, exactly. I mean, what you're talking about is an army of trucks coming through the community that used to be a quiet community. You have industry throwing money at some landowners, not others. You have these trucks going on, creating the access roads and well pads, like I mentioned before, a grid work across the landscape, and then millions of gallons of water mixed with extremely toxic chemicals and pumping it down into the ground. You create all these well bore holes which are perforating all those layers of rock that are keeping the contaminants that are naturally down there. It's just a recipe for disaster. There's so many problems to this, you know, from the toxins, and then there's air pollution, all that truck traffic, and then the methane releases. I mean, that's one of the things in terms of having an issue to organize around. There's something for everybody to get involved, whether you're a doctor or a farmer or a baker. You all see the impact to your livelihood and to jump on it and to try to prevent this from happening.
And yet, with all that you just said, you would think there would be overwhelming opposition to fracking, but it's not. There's not. There are people who are still very much in favor of it, and it's not a small, insignificant number. What do you do? Do you try and change their minds? Do you hope to legislate those people into a corner? What do you do?
Well, you're right, but my perception as to what you're seeing or speaking to is the fact that people haven't learned about the issue yet. Once people learn some of the issues that are involved with this, they almost overwhelmingly are against it. So, you know, the poll across the whole state, a lot of people who are in Westchester County or Columbia County outside of the Marcellus aren't seeing the daily articles in their local newspaper about it, because there isn't the community dialogue about what's going to happen to our small community. So they're a little bit of a lag in terms of a learning curve. Once you look at this issue, you look at the technology and the science. I mean, this whole thing is based on the idea that there's all these protective layers of rock, as they say in the Exxon commercial. It's a mile down, and there's a mile of protective rock. The reality is, if you look at the geologic conditions of New York, that's not true. There's natural faults and a whole series of things that would allow those contaminants to come out into our groundwater, and groundwater is essential to life.
Well, as I said, I love the Catskill Mountains, and having a mountain keeper organization, even the phrase just is comforting. So you guys keep up the good work. Thanks, Wes. Thanks, Kathleen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for this week's show. Our thanks to Vanessa Shelmandine, Ted Hayes and Erica Gedney of the Hudson Valley LGBTQ Center, and to Wes Gillingham and Kathleen Nolan of Catskill Mountain Keeper. Remember, all our shows are now archived on our YouTube channel, and you can find the link on our Facebook page. You can also suggest topics for future shows on Facebook, too. For Kingston Now, I'm Jimmy Buff. I'll see you next time.